What is going on? I actually have not recorded this thing in a while. So, anyway, the Class A and B state tournaments are finally upon us. We are on the eve of the greatest 2 weeks in high school basketball, and that is the state tournament. So, obviously, Class A and B start this week, 2A to 4A start next week, as do 5A and 6A. So, let's get right into this. Let's start with Class A. So, Class A will start on Wednesday. Class B will start on Thursday. So, the boys will have the morning session. The girls will have the evening sessions. So, let's start out. So, we got Okarche and Rattan at 9 a.m., Texoma and OK at 10:30, Sealing and Liberty at noon, and Caddo and Drummond at 1:30. So we got a couple first time. So we got a first time appearance here in Drummond. It was their first appearance in school history. Congrats to them. So getting into matchups, I think Okarche and Rattan, that one honestly has the potential to possibly be a high-scoring game, maybe, because I have watched Okarche, and they are a team that will look to beat you with the press, and they can shoot efficiently. Of course, we know Okarche, they are really good at the run-and-gun offense. I know Ray West was a master at it. Aaron West, I believe, ran the same scheme. And Rattan is one of those teams that if they get hot from three, they can't miss. So as far as players in this one, so I watched Rattan last week against Riverfield in the area tournament, and I would say your backcourt of Cale Clay and Jace May, that'll be two to watch for Rattan. Then the Mugenborg brothers for Okarche, I think I'm pronouncing that name right, which one's a sophomore, one's a freshman. Two taller guard/forward hybrid players that can score efficiently. And you got two teams that are pretty young for the most part. Looking at their starting five for the most part, Okarche has one senior, and I believe Rattan has two. So, like I said, this one does have the potential to be a high-scoring matchup for the most part. Looking at the 10:30 game between Texoma and OK, so that one will be the next game up. So this will be an interesting one. Now, I have not seen OK yet, but I've seen a little bit on them from afar, but haven't seen them in person yet. So as far as this one goes, I think for Texoma, it'll be getting the ball down low to the Hernandez brothers. I believe one's a junior, one's a senior. I think the one that's been out is healthy now, I think. I'm not quite sure, but I know both of them can play. And then OK is probably the youngest team. I know they have a really good freshman group. I know their leading scorer in Diesel Davis is only a sophomore. And then for the most part, they do not have a senior in the starting lineup. 2 sophomores, 3 juniors. Like I said, OK is the youngest team in the state tournament, back in state for the first time since 2017. And I'll be interested to see how this matchup goes. So the next one, Sealing and Liberty at noon. So Liberty in the state tournament for the first time since 2004. and then Sealing in for the first time since 18. So Sealing, for the most part, only 1 senior and 4 juniors. And then Liberty, only 1 senior, 3 juniors, 1 sophomore, and then you got a 6th man that comes off the bench that's only a freshman. He can knock down some big shots. And I watched Liberty play last week when they beat Allen in the area finals. This group can play. They can flat out play. And they remind me a lot of last year's Tushka team. Like, they're athletic, and I, for some reason, don't know why they wasn't ranked higher. I know Jaron Cargill, their best player, is only a junior. The dude is a walking bucket, because I remember in the Allen game, he was scoring at will. Had a couple deep threes, even had a fast break dunk. Oh, yes. He can play. And then Sealing, like I said, 1 senior, 4 juniors. And from what I've watched on them, they play really well together. I believe their 1 senior is Jace Norton, who came in from Hinton. And their leading scorer, Hudson Hamer, he finds ways to score. And this one I do think could be a coin flip, but like I said, I watched Liberty last week. They are legit. Then Caddo and Drummond. So I have not seen Drummond, but from what I have kind of looked on them, they got 1 senior. As they're starting live, they got 1 senior, 1 sophomore, and 3 juniors. So they looks like they do not lose much, and their leading scorer is only a sophomore. And like I said, it is their first state tournament appearance in school history. And then Caddo, of course, like I said, I watched Caddo in the Savannah tournament. So only 1 senior in their starting lineup, and they got 1 senior. They start 1 senior, 1 freshman, 1 sophomore, and 2 juniors. Leading scorer and their best player would be DJ Dill. I say he's got to be averaging over 20 a game, because I think in the game I had watched when they played Kenna, I think he had like 25 or something like that. I'm not sure. And then you got a freshman in Cale Brister that can shoot it from deep. So Caddo been the consensus number 1 for most of the season. And I think this one will be an interesting matchup, because I know Caddo loses to Vanoss in regular season, and I believe Vanoss was the team that Drummond upset in overtime. And this is why I say anything can happen in the playoffs, because you had in this matchup in regionals, Vanoss beats Drummond by 18, and then in the game to go to state in Shawnee in the area tournament, I believe Drummond beat him 57-54 in overtime. I believe that's what one of my ADA guys told me. And that's what I say. Anything can happen in the playoffs. So let's get to the girls' side of Class A. So we've got Sealing and Quentin at 4:30, Cyril and Okarche at 6 o'clock, Caddo and Oklahoma Bible Academy at 7:30, and Riverside and Vanoss at 9 o'clock. So similar to the boys game, I have one of my area teams in the state tournament. Like OK boys are in the 10:30 game, Quentin girls at 4:30. So I have actually covered Quentin a couple different times. So I didn't get to see them in the Purim tournament this year because I was out of town that week, but I watched them down at Wilburton. They are young, but they can play. They are in state for the first time since 2015. So, as far as Quentin goes, they start one senior, three freshmen, and one sophomore. So, as for ceiling, they actually start no seniors. They start one sophomore and four juniors. Ceiling's a real deal. You guys know, I watched them in the Mustang Holiday Classic. They gave Edmond North all they could handle before Edmond North went on a run in the fourth quarter. And that group plays like really well together. So I think it will be interesting to see how this one goes. I know Ceiling, it's like their whole starting five can go. And then like for Quentin, Abby Miller, their lone senior, I would say she's their leading scorer or one of them. And then, like I said, your three freshmen, Alexis Purdom, Olivia Daniels, and Paisley Powell can all play. And then Bailey Nestor's one of the best passers I've seen as a freshman back around my neck of the woods. And then, like I said, first state tournament appearance for rookie head coach Brad Davis. Played at Quentin for 3 years, then played at Red Oak his senior year. So, should be an interesting game. And then, like I said, we've got Cyril and Okarche in the next game. So, Cyril, they start three seniors, one junior, and one freshman. And then as for Okarche, they start three seniors and two juniors. So I actually got to watch both these teams in person. I watched Cyril in the Caddo County tournament when they played Mountain View Godibo in the semifinals. And folks, I can tell you, Brady Harmon can flat out play. So they say on here she averages 28 a game. Honestly, I can flat out believe that because she can shoot from three. She can score at will. And she has a pretty good supporting cast around her. You got two other guards in Mackenzie Rosh and Whitney McHugh that can space the perimeter. And then you got kind of a hybrid post-forward player in Skylee Thompson. That's efficient down low, good on defense. And then McKenna McLemore is a pretty good role player as well. And then I watched Okarche play against Arapahoe Butler in regionals. So both the Rother sisters for Okarche, Jaylee and Jaden, can play. Emma Stover, probably one of the best taller guards I've seen. So I think this one could honestly probably be a high scoring. I'd say the matchup of Brady Harmon and Emma Stover would probably be one to see. Like I said, from what they've got on the Daily Oklahoman, from stat-wise, I believe both of them are leading scorers for their team. Emma Stover averaging 18 a game, Brady Harmon averaging 28 a game. So should be very interesting to see how this one goes. Then we move on to our next game, which is Oklahoma Bible Academy and Caddo. So for OBA, hold up, I actually can't remember their last state tournament appearance. I know it's been a minute since they've made it to state. Find this real quick. I had it in my notes. Okay, their first state tournament appearance since 2007. I stand corrected. It has been a minute. And then Caddo is in state tournament second year in a row. So I looked at OBA's starting five, and for the most part, two seniors and three sophomores. So other than the two seniors, they've got a pretty young core. It looks like they've got a lot of height on their roster. because you got 6 foot, 5'10", 259, and then 5'8". And then looking at Caddo, so you got 3 seniors, 1 junior, 1 sophomore. Of course, like I said, I watched Caddo in the Savannah tournament. They can play. Emily Robinson, their best players, at probably averaging, I say, between 20 and 25 a game. She's got a pretty good supporting cast around her. You got Katie McKay in the backcourt and a pretty good role player in Harley Mullins. And then we also got JC Nichols in there, and then her twin sister, Jordan Nichols, who I believe is 6th off the bench. The whole team can play, and they got the pieces to make a run at the title game. Then we get to our last Class A girls game between Riverside and Vanoss. So for Vanoss, this is, I believe this is their 5th or 6th state tournament appearance in a row. And then for Riverside, this is their first appearance in school history. So for Riverside, they start 2 seniors, 1 sophomore, 2 juniors. And for Vanoss, only 2 seniors, 1 junior, 1 sophomore, and 1 freshman. So, like I said, I watched Riverside last week down at Wilburton. Both the Parker sisters can play. I believe both Alexis and Carly Parker are both their leading scorers. So that backcourt is the driving force for the Lady Braves that makes them go. And then for Vanoss, I really haven't seen a whole lot on them in person. I've kind of watched them from afar. A quick side note, so they actually have both the younger sisters of Emery Ellis. I believe Avery Ellis is a junior, but they now have Livy Ellis, who is a freshman. And she's about as tall as Emery. And I still remember that Lady Wolves super team that had Emery Ellis, who is now playing for Arkansas. So it looks like their leading scorers would be Avery Ellis and Maddie Faust, which that sounds about right from what I've seen on them from afar. So as far as this matchup goes, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the Lady Wolves will play the Lady Braves press. So I look for Vanoss to try to slow the tempo down a little bit. And I think that will be the key for this matchup. I do expect a pretty good game out of this one. All right. So let's dive right into Class B. So Class B starts on Thursday, just like Class A. The boys will have the morning session. The girls will have the afternoon session. So to start out, we've got Fort Cobb, Broxton, and Goodwell at 9 a.m., Roth and Glencoe at 10:30, Sentinel and Calumet at noon, and Buffalo Valley and Kenna at 1:30. So I've actually got two of my area teams playing in the afternoon, in the morning session, which Buffalo Valley and Kenna at 1:30, which, quick side note, that is a rematch of a regular season matchup. Buffalo Valley did not have Jace Hunter the first time. They do have him now. And Kenna is playing really well. They don't have a lot of depth, but their starting 5 can play. And Clay Conley does a really good job with them, as does TJ Gray with Buffalo Valley. Sentinel and Calumet is going to be the really intriguing one, because I did some digging, and last time these two played, I believe Sentinel took Calumet in the overtime before losing 69-62 in a pretty high-scoring game. So similar to Rattan Okarchi, this one could be a shootout. Roth and Glencoe, a rematch of last year's state championship. Of course, Glencoe coming off 2 good wins over Kenna in regionals and Stringtown in area. So this one, like I said, it's a state championship rematch. I know Glencoe got Trey Spear healthy in time before the playoffs. They've got both the Whedon brothers. Roth got a big chunk of their core back. They got depth. I like what Larry Johnston does with them. So we know their post presence is definitely there with Talon Bagwell down low. Dude is like a tank. He defends the post really well. Really good baseball player as well. Fort Cobb, Broxton, and Goodwill. I honestly cannot make heads or tails of this matchup. Fort Cobb Broxton is the real deal. I watched them out at Caddo County Tournament. Their big three of Cray Rogers, Jackson Willits, and Blake Nunn can flat out play. And then you got a sixth man in Eli Willits, and he is a very efficient scorer off the bench. Goodwill, I know they are a pretty senior-heavy team. I know their sixth man came in against Leedy. From what I've seen, hit a couple big shots. So I think that'll be a pretty good matchup. I will say this. If we get Fort Cobb and Roth in the semifinals, that almost has the makings of a state championship because you got number 1 against number 2. I have only seen that happen a couple of times. Number 1 and number 2 on the same side of the bracket. That happened with 4A girls last season. No, actually, back in 2019, when I believe you had Elgin girls, who I think was number 2 at the time, and then Muldrow, who was number 1, both on the same side of the bracket. It's really interesting. You had quite a few upsets in the playoffs that year. Of course, it wasn't like the year before in 4A boys where only 2 of the top 8 made it in, which was Kingfisher and Heritage Hall, I believe. Like I say, anything goes in the playoffs. And then we get to Class B girls. We've got Hammond and Leedy at 4:30, Buffalo Valley and Varnum at 6 o'clock. Calvin Lomega at 7:30, and Pittsburgh Lukiba Sickles at 9. So Hammond and Leedy played once in the regular season. Hammond got them the first time. Leedy, coming off of a pretty good run to the state tournament, took number 2 Lomega to the brink in a pretty high-scoring overtime game. Believe it was like 77-75. I've not got a chance to go back and rewatch that game. But I know they had 2 good wins over Arnett in regionals and area to get to state. So Hammond, we know all about their big 3 of Harley Binkley, Maylee Chaney, and Henley West. And folks, you do not see a 6'4" girl in Class B that often. And Henley West is only a sophomore. She's legit. I say she's got to be averaging at least 20 to 25 a game. And like I said, she is a matchup nightmare from what I've seen. Buffalo Valley in state for the first time since 2014. Varnum, I believe this is Varnum's like 6th or 7th state consecutive appearance. I think this matchup's a pretty even matchup. I know I have not seen Varnum. I know my man Mark Rogers has seen them in the cash-in tournament. He says they're pretty good. I have seen a little bit on Buffalo Valley from afar. I know my guy Joe Juni Luna with TOZ down in Tallahena saw them. I know their backcourt in Courtney Gray and Emma Roberts is a lot of fun to watch. I have seen a little bit on them from afar, but I have not seen them in person yet. Calvin and Lomega. So Calvin in the state for the first time since 1994 when they made 3 consecutive appearances from 91 to 94. And of course, Lomega, I think this is like their 5th or 6th consecutive state tournament appearance. So Lomega, their backcourt of Darcy Roberts and Abby Swart can flat out play. Sorry about that, folks. I'm actually recording this on the road. I'm actually in Washington, my home away from home. So, anyway, so as far as Calvin Lomega, I know Calvin's probably the youngest team in the field, only one senior. Folks, I can tell you, the Holmes sisters, Ariana and Anaya, both those two can play. I have seen a little bit on them from afar. I know one of my area teams scrimmaged them in the preseason. That's how I watched them. And I've kept up with them the whole year. That group is fun to watch. I believe they won 3 in a row to get to state. Again, sorry about this. Sorry if you hear people in the background. I am recording this on the road. Yeah. So I think this one will be intriguing. I do think it could be close here. Okay. Early on. Be interesting to see, like I said, this matchup because, like I said, the Holmes sisters for Calvin can play, and both of them are only freshmen too. So Pittsburgh and Lukiba Sickles. I believe this is a rematch of a quarterfinal game from a year ago. So Pittsburgh had a couple transfer out, but they got a couple players that is eligible now. Lukiba has most of their core back. So interesting thing about this matchup, you've actually got a set of sisters on both sides. For Pittsburgh, you've got Kaiten and Cameron Graham, which are the 2 twins from last year. Then on Lukiba, you actually have 2 sets of sisters on the same team. You've got Camden and Briley Stocking, and then Maggie and Abby Mashaney. All 4 of them can play. So I think this one will be a coin flip as well. Because, like I said with Pittsburgh, you've got Kaiten and Cameron Graham. And Kaiten Graham, she can play she's good enough. She can play all 5 positions. I watched Pittsburgh in the Savannah tournament. And then you got a spot-up shooter in Keely Couch, and then a low-post presence in Akira Hawk. And then as for Lukiba, their back court and their front court. So in their front court, you've got Briley Stocking and Maddie Barger, while in the back court, you have let's see. And then in kind of the makeup the 3, you have Abby Mashaney, who can kind of switch between guard and forward. And then you've got Camden Stocking and Ellie Willard in the backcourt. So all in all, it's going to be an interesting field all around. And I'm looking forward to it. The action starts tomorrow at 9 a.m. Ratano-Carchi will be the game that tips it off in Class A boys. And it's always exciting to hear the State Fair Arena public address announcer say, "Congratulations, you have indeed made it to the big house." So, yeah, that's about it. I will catch you guys at the state tournament. And, yeah, that's about it. See ya.